Hi, Mr. Soto. Thank you so much for joining me today to discuss you, Fantasia, and our performance and contemporary music in general.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy about the way the piece was performed here at David Geffen Hall,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still on cloud nine after the premiere of it a few
Me
days ago.
too. It was such a surreal experience to be a part of.
It was
Well,
the first. Was that your first time on stage at David Geffen Hall?
I think it was for most people in the Free College Orchestra.
Yeah, that was
It's
nice.
such an exciting experience for us, and we were so excited for it. And I'm just so happy it went well, and you were happy with the way we played and all that.
Oh yeah, I was so happy. And then my family was there, and a lot of friends and old friends that I hadn't seen in many years because I went to school in the New York City area.
Oh, I see.
and and I hadn't stayed in touch with some of them, but they came to the concert, so it's like a reunion.
Oh, nice.
So
That sounds so
that
fun.
added to the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, so you went to school. Oh, I know this, but you went to school in New York, right? And you were like going to the Met Opera and like going to the fountain. That's where you got the inspiration for Fantasia.
Yes, I went to school first at Hofstra University
Mm.
in Long Island, which coincidentally it's the place where Adam Glazer also conducts. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, we found that out in the first reading that we did back in December. I I casually mentioned that I did my undergrad at Hofstra in Long Island, and he said, "What? I conduct the Hofstra Symphony," and he
oh,
also
wow.
conducts Juilliard Pre-College. And because of that connection, we connected very well. He arrived after I left a few years, so we didn't coincide. But the same orchestra that Adam Glazer now conducts at Hofstra was the very first orchestra that ever played my music in history
Oh,
ever.
wow.
So
That's
that
crazy.
connection was like almost fateful.
That's crazy. It's such a small world.
Yeah.
Uh, and okay, like I want to hear a little bit more about like Fantasia, like the creative process, like the process of getting it all the way to David Geffen Hall with the New York Phil. Like what was it like?
Well, it's I can tell you like the long version of it because
I'd like to hear the long version. Yeah.
I got the commission to be a part of composing inclusion
Mhm.
around June 2022.
Oh,
And they told me you are chosen to be part of this group of composers to write new pieces for Juilliard, Pre-College, and New York Philharmonic to premiere together. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. I get like two orchestras playing together, and not only that, it's like students with like veterans.
mhm.
So uh, then they told me out of the nine composers chosen, you are gonna be in the last orchestra concert, so you're gonna get an extra year to think about your
Oh,
piece and write it. So I thought, okay, I get almost 2 years to write it, year and a half, which really helped. But I ended up not using the whole time. I
huh.
procrastinated, not because out of lack of discipline. Like I started thinking of what kind of piece I should write, but then I realized that part of composition is not just the writing of the piece, but for a momentous occasion like this one, this kind of specific piece written for a specific orchestra for a specific concert, it deserves to be a piece written exactly not just with them in mind, not just the performance in mind, but also the spot in life that each member is. So I thought, okay, let's see what kind of piece I could write that is interesting for pre-college musicians and also for veterans who some of them have played in this orchestra near Philharmonic for 30 years or more. Who knows? So what could be? And that takes a while because you don't know what the answer is, but you have to wait and think. And sometimes by mere just thinking, you are not going to get anywhere. And you are going to probably superimpose whatever you are going through in your life into the piece. So I'm a big believer that you have to be in the right space, right headspace in your life for the right idea to hit you. And so in the year that elapsed between getting the commission and beginning to write, I didn't write a single note of music for a year. I was listening to music, and every time I thought like, "Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna." and I wrote a note in my little note app,
Oh.
and and then I started collecting emotions that I liked, musical ideas that were exciting to me. For example, a friend of mine, Nathan Vickery, who actually introduced me in the concert. We've been friends for many
Oh.
years. He One time I was just chatting with him, and I told him, "Oh, what are you playing with the Philharmonic this week?" And I'm in LA, and he's in New York, and he says, "Oh, we're just playing a ballet piece of music that not many people know by this French composer called Roussel." And I've never heard of that with a composer. And I was playing golf, and then I open my phone on Spotify and I go to see the ballet, which was Magnus and Ariana. I've never heard it, but from the first chord, I thought, "Oh, this is a very interesting way to start. This is a nice chord." I think it was a major chord with the added six, so something. You cannot see my piano disappears. Well, anyway, so I wrote in my note, okay, I like that chord. Then I wrote, oh, I like that piece that I went to see. I like how the melody is floating over the woodwind. So just little notes that I would collect for almost a year. I still didn't know what kind of music I was gonna write, what kind of piece I was gonna write, but I was connecting things I like. And you
Mm,
have to write pieces that you like.
mm,
And you're like the first person that you have to convince. The second person, I think, is the performer, not the audience. I really believe that if the performer enjoys practicing the music, he or she is gonna practice it more, which is gonna lead for a better performance. So it's even a pragmatic idea. And if they really enjoy performing it, then the audience is gonna enjoy listening to it. Even
mm,
if it's not exactly the kind of music that they listen to, once they see the musician enjoying themselves, there's something there.
mm,
So I knew that much. So okay, I'm thinking, what can I write that is exciting for the players to perform live, like momentous premiere? And then I was watching a video on YouTube of the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain
mhm.
um, playing Respighi's Roman festivals,
Oh, love that.
which is one of my favorite pieces of all time, particularly the fourth movement,
Mhm.
La Befana, the festival in the fall, I think it is, or in the Christmas season. It's a big festival outside in the Piazza Navona in Rome.
Yeah.
And I said this when I got interviewed by the composing inclusion people. I said this, the same thing that I'm telling you right now, that when I saw that piece, that video of the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain at Royal Albert Hall, I saw a violinist exactly at the climax of the finale playing and smiling at the same time. But
Oh,
it's only for a second because the camera cuts. And I can send you the link to that piece on YouTube later.
I would love that.
And I thought I wanna write a piece someday in which the violinist or whoever is smiling while playing. Now
Oh.
I was not really from my vantage point here, sitting in seat. Oh, I couldn't really see the faces of the string players. Maybe you can tell me, but that was my main goal. I want my somebody just like smiling while playing. So I knew that I wanted to write a joyful piece.
Mm.
That's gonna be my at least now I'm already finding a direction that I'm going. Then after like a year, and now to land the plane right now because I'm taking too long, I know. I was playing golf again in Phoenix, Arizona. And I say playing golf because it's my hobby. I'm in the right headspace. I'm enjoying being outdoors. Sometimes I'm by myself. So it leads to thinking. You are engaged in something. It's like going for a hike for me.
Mm.
And then I got, I was in the right headspace because I had gotten the Phoenix Symphony to play a piece of mine. So I
Oh.
was like, oh, nice. I'm glad that I can travel around the country where, sometimes with my music. And then it hit me all of a sudden. I think I was listening to Michael Turk or Turkey. I don't know how to pronounce Turk. A very good composer. Has a piece called Bright Blue Music from like a symphony he wrote about colors,
Oh, wow.
and it's a very nice four movement piece. I think
Oh, wow.
each movement is a different color. And I was listening to that music, and I was so happy, and I thought, okay, this is like the kind of music I want to write. And immediately the idea hit me. You have to, you have to write a piece about the students going to Lincoln Center. And Lincoln Center, I thought, oh, that's how I was when I was their age. What do I like about Lincoln Center? Well, I always would arrive to a fountain. I love fountains in the night with the lights. Okay, you have to write music about that fountain. And then what about all the buildings? Oh yeah, I would always feel so excited to see a concert. I would be so inspired. The left is New York City Ballet. My first love was Tchaikovsky. That was the first composer I fell in love with. Okay, so it's getting autobiographical. Okay, next, let's just go in order. Let's go to the Met Opera. I got into opera quite late. It was like in college.
Mm.
Okay, so I'm growing up now. I'm not a teenager now. Now I'm in college. And then what's next? Well, um, let's go to Juilliard over there because that way I can write music about practicing. And I think that idea actually came out later. But at least I got the idea. You have to write a piece about a young musician growing up, going to concerts. The more I thought about it, the more things I would write out in my notes, in my app, notes app. And then I thought, okay, if we go to Julia, it has to be textures. Let's do scales, and maybe something I can come up with a way of writing scales and then writing material over the scales.
Oh.
And then that led to, okay, if I write something with scales, maybe I can create a motif that is like half a scale. And then and that I came out with 2 months later when I was already writing ideas. So like the first 2 months I was just writing the exciting of being young. And then all of a sudden I came out with a and I thought, oh, that's it. That's the piece because that's the material I can use to create the whole piece. And I put that in the middle, but then I realized no, you have to put it everywhere. And then I went back, I rewrote the opening section. It was originally in 4/4, now it's in 6/8. And when I noticed that it's in 6/8, I thought, wait, 6/8 is the most common rhythm in Latin American music, where I come from.
Oh.
Costa Rican music, a lot of the folk music is in 6/8. Let's add a little bit. I wasn't planning of adding any folk Latin American music because it's expected for a Latin American composer to always have like the rhythms, right? But I wanted to add a little bit of it just to remind the listener subconsciously where I'm from. Like, yeah,
Oh.
this is taking place in New York, but New York is like the center of
Mm.
people from all over the world coming. So I'm part of that group of people. So I'm gonna show my own culture. So I put a rhythm, and I thought, what kind of rhythm can I do? Because I've written 6/8 rhythms before, so I don't want to repeat myself. And then one day, I think I was just scrolling mindlessly on TikTok, and then somebody put a video of dances of Latin America,
Oh.
and I thought, different rhythms and dances. And of course, they put Colombia, which is very popular, Puerto Rico, very popular, lots of music comes out, Cuba. And I kept watching and I thought, I bet they won't even mention my country of Costa Rica. Nobody ever mentions us. We're so small, we're always forgotten. They put Brazil with the samba and bossa nova, Argentina with the tango. And all of a sudden, Costa Rica is mentioned. What? They do mention us? And the music that they show from my country is a rhythm called tambito, which goes like this. Pan, ta, ta, tam, pan, ta, ta, tam, tum, ta, ta, tam, tum,
Oh.
ta, ta, tam, tum. It's played with marimbas quite often. So I thought, let me see how it feels to put that in the beginning of the piece, but with
Mm.
pizzicato and fagot. Sorry, fagot is in Spanish. Bassoon. Pum, 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 pum. Oh, it works. Hopefully, I can play it fast. Tum, 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 tum. Tum, 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 tum. Well, let's add it to the timpani, tum, 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 and it keeps growing. And then towards the end of the piece, as you remember, it shows up in the brass, pa, 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 pa. And
Yeah.
that's like, now I haven't put in the Costa Rican music in it, disguised.
Mm.
So now this is how you are starting to build a lot of different motifs. I have the 5 note motif, I have the Costa Rican tambito rhythm, and now what's missing? I realized that I have a piece that is very rhythmic and exciting, but I remember violin players, they're usually the leaders of the orchestra. They like to play a melody sometimes. What better place to put it than in the med opera section? Because I
Mhm.
can do cantabile. I'm supposed to be lyrical in that section. So I need to write a good melody. That's a lot of pressure because you don't want to write a mediocre melody in the climax slow movement of the piece. So I thought, okay, You are what you eat. So let's go listen to good melodies for a while. So I stopped composing and I spent like a week listening on my free time while driving late at night or while going to the gym and just on the treadmill, listening to Piazzolla, which has very beautiful tango-like kind of melodies.
Yeah.
People usually associate tango with the rhythm, right? Uh, Pang, taran, tan, tom, turun, tum, tum. But it's also very lyrical. There's lots of violins, and Piazzolla himself wrote a lot of very beautiful melodies.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to just steal from him. So I just kind of immersed myself in the idea. I saw a lot of interviews with Piazzolla on YouTube, and then I thought, okay, let's wait for the right time to write the melody. And one night, very late at night, like at 11 p.m., I was feeling like kind of inspired. I don't know why. It was very late. Maybe even a little bit lonely that time of the night when everybody's asleep and you're still awake. Um, and then I went to my piano with headphones, and I took the notebook. Like I don't write my music a lot. I have one notebook that I've used for 7 years. Usually I write my music, I notate straight in the computer. But for this one, I wanted to write with a pencil. And I came up with the melody that is called the aria from the Met Opera.
Oh,
And that I think that's the emotional heart of the piece.
for sure.
And then I started listening to a lot of music by Luis Miguel, which is like a crooner. He's like the most famous singer from Latin America. He's like the Frank Sinatra of Mexico, basically. And my
Oh,
father, one of my father's favorite singers. So I grew up listening to him in the car while he was driving. He's very lyrical because most of his songs are like in the style of Andrea Bocelli. He's not an operatic singer, but he's a lyrical one.
I see.
Uh, So that also influenced in the writing and the chords progressions of the boleros that he would sing. So that's why the aria in the Med Opera is kind of a bolero, which is a genre. It's not the bolero from Spain that Ravel recreates in his famous bolero. It's
Oh,
a Caribbean bolero, originally from Cuba, but also developed in Mexico in the 40s.
mm,
And that's the middle. And that was the last part I kind of knew what I was doing.
oh,
And then I just finished the piece with the and then I went back to the bolero and then I finished the piece. Um, then I there's no recapitulation. It's just like a climax to finishing in the New York Philharmonic because the finale of the piece is here in David Geffen Hall. We
uh-huh.
started where we're playing. So basically, it's a coming of age tale or a time traveling story. It started as we're concert goers, we're sitting in the audience, but it ends as we are sitting in the stage. And not just that, now we're actually premiering this piece with people from the New York Philharmonic, and they themselves, they're probably looking at the young kids from Juilliard and say, I was that kid one day. And I think that we as adults should always try to be like children in their innocence, in their naivete, and in their ability to have noble intentions and have hope for the future. So
Mm.
I wanted to rejuvenate the older musicians at the same time as inspiring the younger musicians who want to grow up. I
Oh,
think
wow. Oh my God. That was like, wow, I just felt like I lived like 2 years, like as you or something. Like
that
going through your entire creative process. That was incredibly inspiring. Like, I've never heard that from anyone. Like when I ask composers, usually like their creative process, they tell me a little bit. Like, oh, I was inspired by nature, I was inspired by this, but wow, like this is like the real, like the entire like process. And thank you so much for sharing it. Um,
oh, sorry for taking so long, but
and
I
no, I actually enjoyed listening to every part of that story. And I remember like when we first got the piece, we were like playing it and then suddenly like kids stopped and you're like, wait, is that Juilliard? Wait, is that New York Phil? Like they would like point at the music and they would be like, wait, like is this about us? Like we would be so excited and it's I'm so glad that you really thought for like the younger generation and like the people playing it, like what it would be like in a perspective when you wrote it for us. Thank you so much. And also, I I found it interesting that you took a lot of inspiration from like classical music, like classical like melodies and like harmonies because I don't know, I feel like compositions nowadays are quite atonal. So when we first heard we were getting two contemporary compositions, you're like, "Oh my God, it's gonna be like really atonal and like we're gonna be playing so many dissonant chords and like all the kids are saying that." And then we got the piece and it was like we were playing some kind of classical like piece, but like with like different parts of like in the middle it's like like the tropical like rhythms come in. Like it says like and like things like that. It was just like so cool. And I think like that's what surprised us a lot. Like all the harmonies, like the Tristan chord, right?
Mhm.
Like all of those harmonies, all the melodies surprised us in a really good way. And I think we were like smiling all like you liked the guy in the video, the violinist. We were smiling all throughout the piece. Especially when we would do like um when we would do like DVC and it was like da 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 and then we would like look towards each other and like play to each other like as stand partners. And I feel like you created this kind of um like happiness, like this enjoyment amongst like the pre-college orchestra kids that I hadn't seen before. And so, yeah, like that's I guess your piece like did everything that you wanted it to do.
Mhm. Well, that's very nice to hear, and I'm happy that it worked out like that. And of course, knowing the talent that the Juilliard Pre-College Orchestra has, I felt like, okay, I don't have my hands tied. Anything I write, they can play because I was they sent me footage from previous concerts from years
Oh.
before, and I saw recordings of Ravel and Bartok and things like that, and I thought, yeah, if they can play Ravel, Laval's, and Bartok's difficult orchestral music, they can play whatever I write. So I didn't have to like do it simple style. And the thing you say about atonal music, I don't really listen to a lot of atonal music in my daily life. So it will be kind of hard for me to write music that I like, concert music that I enjoy, uh, that is atonal because I don't, I never listen to it. It's not in my vocabulary.
Mm,
So as a composer, basically you are a finder of beauty. Whenever you find beauty in the creation, you translate it into music, be
mm,
it in nature, like Beethoven used to take walks, and Tchaikovsky I know took walks, and Mahler would swim to get ideas in the Alps in the summer. So that kind of beauty is captured by the composer and translated. It's not that we're creating beauty from scratch; we're just translating beauty. And where I find beauty, it's in those classical pieces that I try to reference a little bit in my works. Uh, I know that I have references to Wagner, Tchaikovsky, Respighi. Even there's one castanet, which is a reference to Carmen, like the lonely castanet in the Met Opera. Is just, oh, by the way,
oh.
there's a famous opera that is takes place in Spain.
Uh-huh.
So that was my reference to Carmen. And also that having the cellos playing the melody in the opening of the Met Opera section, that's also I think a reference to how Carmen starts. Even though we are using the Tristan chords
Uh-huh.
and Wagnerian kind of harmonies, we are using the structure of Carmen.
Oh, wow.
So that was one of the little Easter eggs that I like to hide.
Wow. So interesting. I mean, it's always interesting hearing about like how composition is created. But yeah, I mean, you make it sound just like I want to be a composer now.
Well, you should if you want to, because I think that every musician has the ability to compose. Maybe not every musician has the ability to write a symphony, but to
Mm,
compose, yes. Because if you play an instrument, all you have to do is put a series of notes that you like in the order that you like. And eventually, yeah, if you develop your craftsmanship to become like a great orchestrator, yeah, that takes time. But composing, I think anybody who can play an instrument is should be able to feel capable of doing.
Mm, that's true. Yeah, I mean, maybe I should start trying a little composing in my practice sessions. We'll see.
Well, you have the benefit that you play the violin, which is a beautiful sounding instrument. So if you have a mic and a quiet area, just start riffing, and
Okay.
then eventually you'll find out if you start just improvising for 5 minutes, you'll find 10 seconds that you really like.
Oh,
Because this is how
okay.
I forgot to even say this part of the story about Fantasia en la Plaza. Once I knew all the concepts, I needed to find motifs, hooks, memorable ideas, and usually I that can be done in the piano.
Uh-huh.
But for me, I don't own a real piano in my apartment. I wanted to go try a real piano. So I went to the church that I attend in Los Angeles, who has they have a grand piano, a little bit out of tune, a little bit old. And I asked if I could just go when the church was empty and just start playing. And I said, yeah, come, yeah, let me know. You can show up anytime. So I went on a weekday when the church is empty, and I stayed there for an hour. I started just by playing some music by composers I like, just reading pieces that I know. And then I tossed that aside and said, let's start just playing and improvising. And once I kind of got excited, I turned my phone and I put the recording up, and I started just, okay, I'm going to pretend that I'm writing the piece live. And of course, like out of those 5 minutes, 90% is forgettable. But like I found like 20 or 30 seconds worth of ideas. That's how the five note motif was born. It
Oh,
was in that session. So I have the recording. I can show it someday. I need to
yeah.
look for it. And that's why the five note motif is para para pam. It's just because I just played it with my 5 fingers. Para para pam, para para pam. So it's very organic to write music like that. So now it's because you play the violin, you're gonna find something that is comfortable to play and that you wanna keep repeating, and that's the way to write a new piece.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for the advice. I'll put it to use. And okay, I feel like we're kind of running out of time. Like I
Mhm.
feel like I'm taking a lot of your time. So I'll just skip to like one question that I really want to ask is like what's in the future? Like what direction, unexplored areas do you want to go with your like composing?
For the future, I have like two parallel careers, two
Mm-hmm.
sides of the same coin, which is my classical music career,
Mm-hmm.
which had a very nice weekend here last weekend, and then my movie career, my film music career, which I also enjoy working at. I would like to write more films, more TV, uh, even video games. I last year I released a soundtrack, which is on Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube. The soundtrack of a video game that came out last year is called Wildmender, and I really enjoy writing and working with the company that made the video game.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually has a lot of cello music, solo cello music. So you can blend the two. I would like to somehow create a concert version of that video game to be performed live. If anybody wants to, first I'll have to find an orchestra who's interested, and then I would also like to get more, develop my career in Hollywood. Try to get more projects connected to TV
Mm-hmm.
and movies. There are like a few projects that I'm working on or I'm gonna start working on in the future. Also with my native country of Costa Rica, we I'm trying to work with people down there so we can develop our own film industry there. So
Oh,
I have some projects down there that are in the oven.
that's super cool.
And then I also have more classical orchestra pieces thinking that some people might want to play in the future. I am writing two at the same time right now, slowly.
Uh-huh.
There's no deadline for them, but I'm always writing something even nobody's asking me.
That I think
That
that's the way to
yeah,
go.
yeah. The challenge is well, that's a good thing. If you're always writing something, then when somebody asks, you already have something in store.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I mean, I think yeah, I've actually gone to one of the video game music concerts before when I was quite young in Korea. I went to like an orchestra is playing this like video game soundtrack. I think they're doing more of those nowadays. Maybe we'll hear your soundtrack in David Geffen again.
I hope so. It would be nice.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for talking with me today. And okay, one last question that I want to ask is this okay, my platform is kind of targeted for younger people, like my people my age, because I feel like a lot of people have this kind of stigma towards contemporary music. They're like, "Oh, it's like atonal. Oh, it's like dissonant. I don't like it." But then like I feel like there's so much that it has to offer, and that's why I kind of want to bring these interviews and this music to like my peers and my fellow musicians. And so if you had like one piece of advice for someone trying to get into contemporary music, like what they should start listening to, like what would that be?
Well, that leads. I can give what I like in a subjective answer,
Or maybe
because
like how you started composing and how you got into contemporary music yourself.
well, I started listening first to cartoon music when I was 7 years old. And not only I was watching Looney Tunes, which was amazing soundtracks. I was watching
Yeah.
all the Disney movies from the 90s when I grew up. Uh,
Oh,
Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, which was my favorite, Lion King, Pocahontas,
mm,
uh, Toy Story. All of them have great music. Hunchback of Notre Dame,
ne-
amazing scores. That really planted a seed. And I didn't start playing an instrument until I was 15. But I was listening to music even without realizing it and loving it at age 7. I also fell in love with Fantasia, the 1940 movie in which the Sorcerer's
oh,
Apprentice. I that was like my favorite part.
I love that
I
movie.
really like Mickey Mouse. So that planted a seed that kind of germinated years later.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay to indulge in the things that you like. I happen to really love the symphonic nature of a lot of those old timey cartoons and
Yeah.
the Disney Renaissance. To this day, the scores, the underscores of film music of Disney and Pixar and DreamWorks, they're orchestral. Like How to Train Your Dragon is one of the best scores of
Yes.
this century.
Right.
So I would recommend those who want to get into contemporary music to realize that film music is contemporary music.
Right.
There
Oh.
shouldn't be a distinction like, oh yeah, that's just for kids. No, no. Like How to Train Your Dragon is three films with three amazing scores by
Mm,
John Powell. Great orchestration, great melodies, great orchestral writing. There are good orchestral writers working nowadays. Not everybody in the film world is it's amazing. Not everybody in the classical concert music world is amazing, and they are not better or worse than other. They just chose to work in a different medium, and there are actually people who work in both,
mm-hmm.
like in me included. So look for those people.
Okay.
If you really like Disney, like I that was when I was a little kid, go listen to the Disney scores of all the Disney catalog. You're gonna find things you like, and eventually you're gonna find who wrote it, and you're gonna see their career, and they also have similar stuff somewhere else. So follow
I
those people.
I got
Not only follow those that the orchestras tell you to follow.
it.
Like go on your own journey. It's a blessing to have not only Spotify but YouTube to look at scores.
Mhm.
While you hear the music, you can see the scores of the orchestra. So
That's such great advice.
yeah, the possibilities are endless if you look where nobody else is looking.
Thank you so much. Okay. I mean, I just learned a lot from you. And I'm sure people watching this will do too.